Okay, so yesterday we talked about all the different organelles that's found within the cell. And today I want to kind of relate those things to to different parts of a city. So there were a couple organelles that, as we talked yesterday, I compared them to certain things, like the Golgi was the post office. So today we are going to talk specifically about the cell city. Okay, so starting with the cell structure, the plasma membrane. So in relation to a city, this would be the city wall or the boundary. So to review what the plasma membrane is, it's a flexible, selectively permeable boundary that helps control what enters and leaves the cell. So there's that term, selectively permeable. We talked about that when we talked about the cell membrane. So here it is. It lines the entire structure of the cell, right? It is that outer covering. So that would act as the city wall. It's what is around the city, protecting what's inside the city. So then we have the cytoplasm. Remember that it was the semi-fluid material that the organelles float in. In relation to a city, that would be the lakes, the streams, and the rivers, right? Because it's in those lakes and streams and rivers that things move around, that they're transported, and that other things float in. So the same is true for the cell. The cytoplasm acts as those lakes, streams, and rivers that would be found within a city. Then we have the cytoskeleton. So this is the foundation of the city, right? It's what everything is built on. Remember when we talked yesterday, we said that the cytoskeleton is exactly how it sounds, like it does in our body, like the skeleton does for the human body. It supports, it gives things shape. And so it's the supporting network of long, thin protein fibers that form a framework for the cell, and it provides an anchor for the organelles inside the cell. So you can see here, it calls it the microtubules, but here in parentheses it tells you that that's part of the cytoskeleton. So you can see right here, that's helping to anchor organelles that are found within the cell. So that is the city part, it is the foundation. Here we have the nucleus. So when we talked yesterday, I compared it to the brain of the cell. That's what everything runs through. So in the city, it would be the mayor's office or city hall, right? Everything goes through the mayor's office. Everything goes through city hall. It has to be passed. It has to be handed down from the mayor and says, okay, this is good to go. Go do it. So the nucleus directs all cell processes. It contains cell's DNA, and in the center of the nucleus is the nucleolus, and that's what makes ribosomes. So here's that nucleus there, and right there in the center is the nucleolus. So the ribosome is what manufactures proteins, and it's made up of RNA and protein. So if something is manufactured, right, that's made in a factory. So if a ribosome manufactures proteins, the city part would be the factory. It's where things are being made. It's where things are being manufactured. So you can see that the ribosomes are found here on the rough endoplasmic reticulum. Remember, what makes it rough from smooth is that rough has ribosomes on them and the smooth does not. And there's also some free ribosomes floating around out here. Now we're moving on to the endoplasmic reticulum. So remember that we said both rough and smooth, there's a difference between rough and smooth. The rough has ribosomes and the smooth does not. But they both transport materials. So the rough ER makes proteins, the smooth ER makes lipids, and then they both transport those things respectively, right? So they produce them and then they transport them. So it's a highway or the road system, right? The way that things travel, the way that we travel within the city is on the road. So that is what the endoplasmic reticulum would be equivalent to in the city part, is the highway or road system. So here we talked about this yesterday, the Golgi apparatus. This is where things are modified, sorted, and packaged. Proteins are packaged and they are sent out into sacs called vesicles. So remember, if that's where everything is packaged, it's equivalent to a post office. And then these vesicles, right, would be your mailman, because they are what's being packaged is being packaged up in the vesicles, and the vesicles send things out into the rest of the cell. So here we have the vacuole. Now remember, both plant and animal cells have vacuoles, but it is much larger in the animal cell. In the plant cell. So here we have the plant cell. We can tell because here's those chloroplasts, remember? There's also a cell wall. But see how big the vacuole is? Well, the vacuole is used to store food, enzymes, and other materials within the cytoplasm. So, in relation to a city, those would be the storage units, right? Those would be those big units that you go rent out to put your extra stuff in that you need to store, maybe seasonal, you put your Christmas decorations in there or whatever it may be. So the vacuole acts as a storage unit within the city. So here we have the lysosome. Now remember the lysosome, we said yesterday when you hear the word lyse, that typically is related to death of some sort. So lysosomes digest worn out or extra organelles and food particles. So it goes through and it cleans up the waste. It breaks down the wastes and it gets rid of it. So in relation to the city, that would be the garbage company, right? We set out our trash, the garbage company comes through and picks it up and gets rid of it. So that's the same as what a lysosome does within the cell. So now the centrioles, these are made of microtubules. Now remember, when we talked earlier about the cytoskeleton, we pointed out the microtubules here, right? The microtubules are part of the cytoskeleton. Well, centrioles are made up of those microtubules. So these are similar to what the cytoskeleton was. Remember, the cytoskeleton was the foundation. Well, now the centrioles are the city blocks. So we're starting to build on top of that foundation. So they aid in cell division. Moving on to the mitochondria. Yesterday I said you're going to hear it referred to a ton as the powerhouse of the cell. So within a city, that would be the power plant, right? That would be the AEP, that would be the AK Steel. It would be those type of things within the city because it's generating the energy for the cell. It converts fuel particles into usable energy. So the mitochondria, powerhouse, it's producing our power, it is generating energy. So that is equivalent to the power plant within a city. Now, dealing with a chloroplast, remember chloroplasts are found only in plant cells, and that is where photosynthesis takes place. So that captures light energy and converts it into chemical energy through that process of photosynthesis, and it is only in plant cells. So, if the mitochondria is a power plant, the chloroplast is going to be a solar power plant because it still is converting things into energy, right? But it is doing it with sunlight. It uses light energy to do that. Whereas with this, we're using fuel particles and we are turning it into energy. So fuel, just the regular power plant, but the chloroplast uses light energy, so it is a solar power plant. And finally, we didn't talk about this yesterday, but sometimes within a cell, this isn't necessarily within a cell, but it's on the outer area of the cell, there are things called cilia and flagella. So cilia are a bunch of tiny little, they almost look like hairs. So cilia are the little ones, and flagella is this one long, kind of looks like a rat tail, but it's just one long tail. That's the flagella. The little ones are the cilia. So they aid in the movement of the cell. So the cilia are short hair-like projections, and the flagella is a long and it moves with a whip-like motion. So if you were like to crack a whip, you know how it kind of ripples when you crack a whip? That's how the flagella is. It's one and it has that whip-like motion, and that's what helps it move. Kind of like a snake. Like if you ever see a snake slither across the ground, that's kind of what's happening with the flagella. It kind of has that whip-like slithery motion, and that's what causes the cell to move. Whereas and this is kind of a funny motion with my hands here, but the cilia is on the side of the cell like this, and it's kind of moving like this. It's those short hair-like projections, and it's on the side, and it just kind of moves along like that. So, with that being said, since those aid in the movement of the cell, they would be equivalent to the taxi or bus service found within the city. To get you from point A to point B, you may take a city bus. Well, to get cell from point A to point B, it needs those cilia and flagella to help it move along. So this is just kind of a fun way for you to try to remember the different parts. You're going to have a worksheet tomorrow where it's kind of like a graph and a table, and you have to fill in the functions of every organelle. But then you also, part of your grade, part of the credit that you'll get is putting the proper city part. So this is just kind of a fun way for you to remember the different organelles found within the cell and their function, help you remember them a little bit better. So make sure that you familiarize yourself with this. I'll also post this PDF so you can go back and refer to it. But if you have any questions, as always, please reach out to me, email me, we'll set up a Google Meet, whatever will help you. So I hope this helps you learn this a little bit better and familiarizes yourself a little bit more.